let's go. Yeah. I really got the feeling today that everything is going my way. Now this is what I'm talking about. Every time I see your smile, it makes me shout. Let's go! Ah, let's go! Woo-hoo-hoo. Nothing's gonna stop us today. Get on the bus or get out the way. We're cruising with the radio on. So turn it up to 10. Here comes our favorite song. Let's go! Ah, let's go! Woo-hoo-hoo. Let's go! Ah, let's go!
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good dawn, good whatever you find yourself on the continent, anywhere you find yourself. Welcome to another episode of the Power Series. I'm yours truly, Samuel Adjani. In today's episode, we have a very, amazing guest who's going to share, a lot of insight into not just technology, but the other side of him. When we come back, I'm going to introduce our guest and we're going to get rocking. Stay tuned. Awesome, we are back. We are back. We're back. We're back. We're back. It's an amazing Sunday. Even though some of us are still in lockdown, we expecting the president of Ghana to address the nation. I think in a couple. I mean, he's probably started, but we're going to get to know if our lockdown is going to be extended, or if we're going to be allowed to roam about a while. But wait, either ways, it's Sunday. For us, it's time to learn about some Power goodness. And today is going to be on Power Platform, specifically how to build our apps faster. And today I have with me a special guest. And yes, guys, I fixed my sound effect. So, as usual, I will start with the drum roll. And then I will bring in the applause. So, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Sancho Harker. Welcome, my friend. You are
Hey,
live.
thanks for having me here, Samuel.
Awesome, awesome. This is amazing to have you because um it's I mean the whole Power community is an amazing community, and day in day out when I reach out to both local and I mean you guys out there, and the hospitality is just amazing. You're like, hey, I want to come on the show. I want to share my, my thought. I want to share my ideas, and hey, we are really grateful to have you. And I know that for the next, almost hour, we're going to have a lot of fun into your, your life, and then also into, what you're going to share with us. So as always, my viewers and listeners would like to know who is Sancho Haka.
Okay, cool. So my name is Sancho Harker, and I develop all sorts of Power Platform solutions for a company called Pinnacle Group. They don't do solutions for anyone else. I build it all for internal, and I'm one of the Power Apps champs. I'm a super user on the Power Apps community forums. And very recently, like yourself, I was made MVP.
Yep,
So that was
yep,
that was
yep,
pretty cool.
yep.
So
Awesome.
let's maybe start with how this all started way back
Yeah.
when. So I get a bit emotional now. So when I was like 4, my dad walked in on me rebuilding his work computer.
Oh no. I
and
can
I
see
did
where
it.
that's going.
I did it. This is the thing. Like I did it, but I shouldn't have been able to. So that's I was already that young. I was
Yeah.
really interested in it, and then I started playing around with like Basic and like DOS batch files and like very early days Visual Basic, and that was really cool. And then few years later, he did pass away with an accident, and I struggled to rekindle that energy for like years and years and years and years, and then sort of around August 2018. So many years later, I saw Martin Lee's video and Sumit Saini's video on how they did
Yeah.
Power Apps, and I was like, I can do that. I can definitely do that. So I took a quick look around. I read through some of the documentation, and I was thinking, how can I support my partner better? This was my real goal. I was thinking, my partner, she's got a spinal injury and an autoimmune disease, so I want to make her life better and our life better. And I didn't really have time to like spend years learning one of the traditional languages and then slowly climb up the ladder to get to a point where I'm like able to do better. But so then I looked at Power Apps, and within a month I was able to build a production app that is used in production at the company. So like there's no way I'd be able to do that with like C#. I mean, I'm teaching myself C# on the side, but it's the ramp up to that point where you can do cool stuff is so quick. So for those who don't know, I'm also autistic. So, that presents like its own struggles, because the way I interpret things in the world maybe is not the same as everyone else. And it's obviously got its pros and its cons. I get overwhelmed very easily. Bright lights are horrible. But I can visualize things in my head with the apps very, very easily. And like almost create end-to-end solutions in my head, and then just do them, just make them in Power Apps. So yeah, it's only been like a year and a half, and all this crazy stuff has happened. Like super user, the champion, the MVP, like in like such a short space of time.
Yeah.
But I think really my goal has always been I want to help as many people as I can with whatever energy I have spare, because like I don't know if you know about this thing called spoon theory.
Yeah.
So I've only got a limited number of spoons that I can use in a day, and showering might be like 3 spoons, but I've only got 17. So and then whatever I've got left end of the day, I try spend helping on the community forums, or I worked on this branding template to help other people work on apps a lot quicker. And yeah, it's been crazy. And like you say, the community is amazing. I have never ever in any of the other like browsing around the forums of other languages, you just don't get that same level of responsiveness and connectiveness, and everyone wants to help you. I can't think of a single person who's been like, nah. Which is is crazy. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's me. That's how I ended up doing Power Apps, and I've stuck to it since then, and I will keep doing it. There's all sorts of cool things coming up.
Yeah. I mean, it's for me, it's very amazing and interesting, and I want to use this opportunity to call out a few one person who it's it's Autism Awareness Month this month, the month of April.
That's right, yeah.
And there's a lot of stigmatization and bad calls, myths, all surrounding autism. But here you are, you're autistic, but you are defining that. That's not defining who you are. You're going beyond it and translating it into solutions. And yeah, I want to call out one lady, Afi Antonio. You're doing an awesome work, in the country and beyond. And this is from myself and Sancho, telling people that, I mean, yes, there's autism, but we can always beat it. We can always go beyond, autism. So keep up the good work, Afi. This is just from the two of us. So, Sancho, what do you have for us today?
Okay, let me get my screen up.
And welcome to all of you on the stream, Ollie, Linda, all of you, welcome. All right.
Okay, cool. So that's kind of what I said earlier, so I'm not going to go into details. There's a little link at the bottom there. People can follow that. So skipping on. Right. So
And
one of the big problems.
Sancho, just before you go on, can you
Yo.
take me off? Like down there, you
Oh
have me
yeah,
in your,
yeah.
yeah, because
Thank
there's
you.
already an awesome. Yeah, let's go. Let's do this.
Okay, cool. So my thought was I mean, I was spending crazy amounts of time building power apps, right? Now, the reason being I had to match, like we had a crazy amount of brands. Like before we did this whole consolidation thing, we had like 7 different brands, each with 4 colors and their own logo. So every app, the different person using it had to use a different color scheme. Now, to do that manually is a pain because you got to go through every single little object, and then you pick which property you want to change, each of the fill and the border color and all of that, and then you set it to a variable, and then every time someone different logs in, you check what domain they're on, and then you change all the variables so that the colors all change in the app. Now, doing that is obviously, I had to do that with every app, and that's just way too time consuming. So that was the one reason. And the other reason was, if you are low vision or have color blindness, unless someone who's building a power app builds it for you in a way that is accessible, it's just not going to be, because the default functionality isn't there yet for automatic high contrast, for example. So the other thing I wanted to build into this template was how right off the get-go, if you just open the template straight away, boom, it is accessible. So in terms of hours, like I was spending, like an hour a week doing this minimum. I mean, probably a lot more than that, but there's over 2.5 million Power Apps developers out there. And that was when they released this figure, that was like May last year. So there must be way more now. And you add up the hours, and that works out to about 285 years being spent. If you just spend 1 hour in your entire career, your whole time, you just spend 1 hour, which, let's be honest, that's not happening.
Yeah.
then you're spending together, we're spending 285 years of time just changing these little properties. So, oh man, there just had to be a better way to do this. So I came up with a better way.
Awesome.
So let's browse, and I'll throw some links in later, but let's just get to the app now. Okay, so the idea with the app was simple. I just wanted it to be simple, as everything you do is already done. So if I put in a new screen and pop in like a label and button and a drop down and then date picker and a let's go with pen input. So one of the big things, right, even if you go through and change all the colors, our demo app I built here just before we got on the call, I took a button, I changed the color of the fill to a variable, and then when the app starts, it sets that variable to a color. So that's what you have to do to get this sort of dynamic color change going. But this you'd have to do for everything you create. And then you'd have a button like this, and each of these, all they're doing is they're doing set that color and then color value. Fine. But that means every time you want to, let's say you want to insert a button that is branded like that, you have to copy paste it from this screen of like pre-branded buttons. But then if you give this app to one of your users, let's say you're handing out this template, and they decide, oh, I'm just going to put in a new button. Oh, they've already broken it, because they're going to just use that default button, and it's not going to match your corporate colors or whatever else you've set up. So that was a big problem, because people are going to use these by default. They're going to go insert new button, or they're going to go insert success screen, and then they're going to work with that. And they might know the exact RGBA or hex value for your corporate branding. So it just ends up with you having to come back and clean up all of that later. So it's just more work for you. So what I want to do is do away with that. So if instead of doing that now, I just put all of those in there right now. If I pop into this theme chooser screen and just flick to one of the accessibility themes, go back to that screen, and we're done. That is how it should be. It should just be one click.
Wow.
So that is, I mean, that is huge, because instead of spending, like, it took me like
Yeah.
10, 15 minutes to do this lemon button,
Mhm.
to get it all right and sorted. And then you do that with like every app you build. But
Yeah.
with this way, everything you do by default is already
It's
branded.
ready. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's some other things like the pen input uses. I've got two modes for the themes, and one is like a dark mode theme and normal. So this is currently in dark mode, and if I start drawing in there, you can see it used a light pen. If I go
Ah.
back, to default theme and I start
Oh.
drawing again,
Yeah, that changes. Okay.
dramatic. Another one is the date picker, right? You
Yeah.
can't customize the date picker
Yep.
in Power Apps properly. You can do some stuff, like you got the border, you got the fill, you got the color, and there's a few more down in the options here. But effectively, when you click on the date picker, this bit at the top here, the blue, no matter what you change in it, that blue is
Yeah,
going to
that's
be
good.
blue.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a pain. People complain about this a lot. and rightly so, because it's like the one control that you can't actually customize everything of. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And so my one does, though. If I go back there and hit this date picker, boom,
Oh, yeah.
done.
That fixed it.
And it's not just the
Wow.
top, it's every bit of it.
Everywhere.
This,
Yeah.
that. So if I go to like one of these cool purple themes I came up with, and back here, you can see there, purple, purple,
Everything.
purple.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
This
you can't do
this is a
that normally.
huge time
That's
saver.
and yeah, this is the thing. Like, all you do is you insert, like, I've got it built on a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary color.
Yeah.
I've got
Okay.
plans to build it to primary and secondary only in another version, but that's for later.
Mm.
But all you need is three colors, and you're good to go.
Wow.
So what happens is during the app on start. Now I've got comments all over, like lots of instructions, because the one
Yeah.
thing, like, I know we're talking about templates and this is my
Yeah.
template, but there's obviously the default templates that come with Power Apps.
Okay.
And the one thing they're missing is something to tell you what each of the things does.
It does. Yeah.
It's good sometimes to be able to explore it all, but sometimes I'd really just want comments so I can quickly run through and go,
Run
okay,
through
yeah,
it and
yeah,
do it.
that's
Yeah.
used for that, that's used for
Yeah.
that, done. So when the app starts up, it sets these three colors: primary, secondary, and tertiary, and then a text value for each.
Of them.
And why a text value for each? Because we want them to contrast carefully and
Exactly.
properly, so that it's accessible and that it's not stopping people who have color blindness or low vision from having to use it.
Yeah.
So one of the things I use sometimes is the color blindness simulator. I don't know if you know about that.
No,
And
I've not tried it. I mean, it would be cool for you to show us that. So there's a
that one.
question in the chat that is asking, can we use this for any Power Apps? My answer, I'm guessing, is yes.
Yes, I'll get to that, because
Okay.
yes, but the way Power Apps builds objects, it builds them as like static standalone objects.
Yeah.
So it uses the color from the theme you had originally and puts
Yeah.
it as a static value, like RGBA 255, whatever. So if you do it, yes, we can do it, and I'll go into how to do that a bit later. But if you do it, you need to actually go in each object and then change them to a different value, one of the primary, secondary, or tertiaries. So yes, you can edit your existing ones to do it.
Yeah.
So now the idea with these this color blindness simulator, right, is you take a screenshot like that, copy that to clipboard, and then in here I should just be able to paste that. Yeah. So that's what I like about this as well. You just paste in whatever you see.
Okay.
And then you can go through and try out all the different color blindness types there are, because it's not just one type. There's so many.
Okay.
and then you make sure that in each of those, whatever you're doing is visible, because
Yeah.
if it's not visible in one of these, you've essentially like singled out that type of
That person,
colorblindness to not be
yeah,
able to use your app.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so that's one thing.
That's cool.
And the other bit was the chart palette. So right now, to change the colors in the charts, it is possible. It didn't used to be possible, but it is possible now. It's got an array of colors. So for most people, that's probably a bit more, especially the entry level maker. Entry level maker does not know what an array is, never mind what an array of colors is and how that's going to get complicated.
Yeah.
So I simplified this to a point where it's just these boxes. So if I change this box to like, I don't know, bright yellow, and then hit set chart colors. Okay, so okay, cool. It's changed on those three.
Changed, yeah.
But now, if I insert another column chart here, voila,
That you
done.
picked it up, yeah.
Yeah. So same sort of thing where whatever you change these to from now on, that will
Yeah.
stick as the default. So
Yeah.
so yeah. So the other things, there's a few. Oh, there's actually quite a lot in here, but I'll try not go too long on it. So a loading screen, right? Let's expand that out. So loading screen, cool picture in the background. In the details there, I've got the site where these are public domain images. They are free for use. Anyone can use them in production apps. There's no limitations.
Okay.
So that's very cool. And then what happens is, so let's go in here and go back to that screen. As the loading screen fades in, the image fades in as well.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's very
yeah.
subtle, but it is there. And so my idea was with this is when this is loading, we give it a default time. Now I've given it like I think 5 seconds, and at the end of the 5 seconds, so on this timer over here that's hidden's end, it does something like navigate. But
Okay.
also on the start, it does data loading. And then whenever the data loading is finished, you do a navigate as well. So whichever one, it's like a race condition, whichever
Okay,
one
which
finishes
comes
first,
yeah.
it's gonna navigate. So either they'll expect 5 seconds and they'll be like, yeah, I can wait. Okay, app's loaded, or they'll be pleasantly surprised that at about halfway, maybe it's finished loading.
Yeah. Cool.
Because there's this problem that people's attention spans are very, very low. I mean, I know mine is. So you're impatient, and this sets a sort of expectance of them that they know, okay, it's making its way. I'll just give it a second or two.
Yeah.
Whereas if you see the usual spinning logos, I mean, I'm definitely at fault for this, but I try click them to see if I can't speed it up, or like if there's an auto navigate or something that I can click.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all about setting these expectations for the user. So there's a home screen, which is it's got the gallery with a bunch of different options here, which are all the different screens we have listed here. And all of that, again, is defined in the app on start. So let's go to on start. So here's where I set the colors for the charts, for example. And this just sets it to those boxes. Here we have the collection of different themes that are in the theme palette. And then here we have first menu item. Now that menu item I haven't shown yet, but what we want is the screens, screen navigation. So there's this collection here, screen navigation. It's got three options for each thing, just a name, the actual screen itself as an object, and then what icon do you want to use. So if you want to add a new one, you can literally just copy paste that, paste it in there, and then call it, this one was, that new screen we added was screen1.name, and screen1 as the screen, and then the icon, let's just, anything really. And then if I just run that on start, boom, there it is. So trying to keep that really simple as well, because I used to rebuild a lot of these myself, like just because I didn't think about it at the time, and I was like, it doesn't take me that long, but it really does in the long term. All these little bits that you're doing add up into like hours and hours and hours over your year, and that's time you shouldn't really spend. You should just be focusing on the productivity
Exactly. Yeah, it's
and like
productivity.
getting it to do what you want it to do. So as part of that, I also gave entry level makers a lot of
Mm,
ideas. So
yeah.
this for example, this is just a normal gallery. All I've done is I've used the 3-tone primary, secondary, tertiary colors to give it that depth. So
Yeah.
your tertiary color at the back for the background, unselected items get secondary color, and then selected ones get primary.
Primary.
And then instead of having it navigate to a different screen, for example, what I've got here is a second gallery, which is this one, detail gallery, and that describes the detail of the item you clicked.
Click it on. Okay.
Because sometimes there's issues with well, not issues, but concerns in terms of passing variables and other things through
Yeah.
to other screens.
Other screens.
So one of the templates you can use is to just do it all on the same screen. Just all it does, that button, all it's doing is it's hiding
Oh, okay.
by setting
Toggling
that.
the state of that variable.
Yeah, exactly. And then that is this detail gallery's visible setting is set to that. And then the same for the item gallery is also set to that. It's just the opposite version of it. So as you toggle the one, the other one untoggles. And then
Okay.
in terms of the edit item itself, that's then run from buttons. So there's two ways to do this remote running of code in Power Apps. So this is probably a little bit above entry level maker, but it's something to like be aware of early on, because it can save
Yeah.
you
Lots of
immense
time.
amounts of time. So one of the things is, okay, we got these hidden buttons. Now this one, for example, is one of the items was selected, then it does a notify, so you run it there. Now the whole idea is that what happens, you have an admin screen and you toggle one global variable across your whole app that then
that
shows all these items. And then I have a short description of what it actually is and what it does. So this is the logic for the menu. This is for when an edit item is chosen, and so on and so on. And then that way, instead of later on, you come back to, let's say 6 months down the line, you come back to your app and you're like, oh, where did I put that thing again that does the other thing that, so instead of doing that, you have it all in one nice overlay that you can just quickly go through, and then you don't have to worry about, so if I, what was it on the X, or was it on the on click of this, or was it the, none of that. So you contain it all in one section. So
that's cool.
That is the one design pattern there, and then the menu as well. That's also on the on start. You just configure it by literally copy pasting one of the values and then add in whatever you want it to do, and then change what the menu item selected button, the hidden button, does. So if the menu selected is called home, then navigate to home, or if this or if that. You just add another condition on the bottom here. So it's trying to keep it as simple as possible, instead of I'm trying to avoid people reinventing the wheel every single time, because I did a lot of that. So I've been there, and I want to start helping as many people who's getting into Power Apps to think about this stuff from the beginning, instead of later on once they've gone through all the pain.
Yeah, that's true.
And then another example on the screen, and then on the third screen, what I've got is a variable height gallery. So this one, instead of navigating elsewhere, as you select each one, there's a trigger that happens, and then it expands the detail of that individual item. So that's instantaneous viewing, instead of having to navigate away or to do anything, because sometimes you don't need a whole edit screen. Sometimes you just want to pop a bit of extra information for the user. So this is another pattern for that. And then on the menu, now this uses a separate menu, and I'm going to go look at that right now. So let's get down there. This will be menu items 2. So with this menu, instead of just having the name, tooltip, and icon, which is what I have in the standard
The
menu,
standard one, yeah.
I've included the color of the
Oh, okay.
icon, the background, the hover, and the hover background. So that way you can have these customized items. So like I wanted the selected ones to always be like gray to show that
Gray.
they're selected, and I wanted the save to be green no matter what, because that's our like go-to action.
Action, yeah.
But you could do it for anything. You could have a rainbow there if you wanted to. But it's trying to show that it doesn't have to be, it's very easy to change. Like in this one, I wanted to show that it doesn't matter whether you're using RGBA, whether you're using the enumerated
The enumerator of the colors.
code,
Yeah.
then or the hex value, color value
Values,
items.
okay.
They all end up the same. It as far as Power App's concerned, there's only one thing it can't do. It can't compare that to RGBA or color value. So the enumerated values, this is something that might come up with some people. I've mentioned it in the code here. If you try to do a conditional, like if this item's fill is the color black, and if that other thing's fill is RGBA 00000, it won't treat them as equal. It can't read them, can't compare the two. So that is something I had to learn the hard way through much frustration.
I'm guessing that for all of this, you have it in the community template, so anyone can actually go download and play around with it.
Exactly.
Awesome.
I've got it completely shared. There's like a fairly decent sized write-up with it. I'm working on some extra videos at the moment, but like I'm not great with pre-recorded videos. It takes me a long time to do. But what I'm trying to do is show people that there's so much more possible with Canvas apps, because I know there's always this debate of, do I do model driven, do I do Canvas apps? I mean, the way things are going soon, you're going to be able to do both at the same time, so that's going to be interesting. With the release wave details they pushed out, so yeah, it's going to be crazy. So how did I do this is more interesting, because it turns out that the MS app file is a zip. So if I open it up with 7-zip, this is a blank Power App created from the theme generator. So the theme generator that Microsoft released as an unofficial tool on their Power Apps GitHub, it looks like this.
Yes, okay.
So it's kind of like what I'm doing, because this is where I got the inspiration from it from. I was thinking, okay, they use this, and you go File, Save, and it creates an MS app.
MS app, okay.
And then you import it, and it will use whatever colors you've set everywhere in the app. So I was like, okay, there must be something in there then that is being changed by this.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, I'm going to find it, and I'm going to do my own thing with it. So, because the problem with the theme editor, obviously, is it's static. So yeah, you can set all these cool company colors, but if your company does a rebrand and you've built like 400 apps with it, you're going to be in trouble, because you got to go through 400 apps now and change all of it. So the other interesting thing I found was, okay, obviously I right-clicked on one of these thinking I was going to just look at the properties or whatever, and I saw 7-zip had an option for it. So 7-zip already picked it up as an archive. But the other thing that came up was, if you create one from the theme editor and you create one from the portal, they have different structures. So this one's from the theme editor, and this one is from the portal. And the thing I noticed that changed was this themes.json, which, so JSON, for anyone who's watching, that's JavaScript object notation. It's just another fancy language for like containing things. I mean, it's basically just items with properties, thousands of them. So if you go into references on the one from the portal, you can see there that one is slightly larger than this one. Reason being, this one has not been updated since the tool was made public. And whereas this one contains all the recent controls and everything else they've added to Power Apps since this was made. So if let's open up the blank one. Right. So theme editor one, I mean, it's messy. You can use
Right.
something like Beautify, and it will nicely format it for you. And then if I open up the other one, they already now see before when you use a theme editor, they compressed
Yeah.
it down every single space, every single tab. They got rid of it to conserve file size. Whereas in the modern ones that you save from the portal, they just don't even bother anymore. They're just like, nah, we leave it.
Yeah.
So what we can see here is some properties, right? So you got a primary color, 1, 2, 3, 4, which is exactly what we saw in the actual theme editor. So that's what gave me this idea. So we got there 1, 2, 3, 4, missing 5 there, but we'll gloss over that. Yeah, we'll gloss over that. I'll file a bug report for that one.
Yeah.
And each of them has an RGBA value. So my initial thought was, okay, cool. I'm going to set it to like a text value. So like color 1.
Color 1, okay.
And then make a T. And then when I was in the app, I was going to make it go, if this thing dot text equals color 1, then set the fill to whatever.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was my initial idea. But when I imported it with this, what it did was it interpreted that as a variable.
Oh.
So I think even the when I mentioned this to some people on the actual Power Apps team, they were surprised because that's not something that's currently done. You can't have default variables throughout the app. And so using that, which when you save it down again, it actually turns it into X, a variable. But so it doesn't like that I put T there, and so it tried to interpret what it could from it, and it got variable. So I was like, yeah, win. Perfect win for me, because that's exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then all I do is when the app starts up, set that color 1 to a color, and every time I flick between themes, just change that variable again. And then now that gets how to change it. But the question is now, how do you set it on all the default objects? Because what I'm going to go back here and show is if I pop in a new screen, like, we had the success screen in the other one. Now, you can see there's already a slight difference there.
Yeah.
So that will now, if I go back to the funky purple.
Oh, okay.
Done. Didn't have to do anything. And it's the same. If I go tutorial screen now, boom.
Same. Yeah. Wow.
And let's go to accessibility mode, go back in there, done.
And everything is
done.
Wow.
This
is a huge time saver. But some of the comments coming in, people are like, well, how difficult is this to do? I'm like, well, you're just watching him change a bunch of JSON files to make this work. I'm sure you have probably like videos or step-by-step, tutorials on how you made it, so we can reference that probably on your channel after the show. So then they can actually see, a step-by-step in building it.
Well, yeah. There's some, but honestly, the best advice I can give is, again, don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah. Just pick it, pick it and make the changes.
What you can do. I've got 3 colors, right? And maybe you don't want. Maybe you're not worried about the insert buttons and you just want things themed for a client. If you insert a screen and put in like a gallery, you can then work on and use whatever you want in here. You can use those 3 colors in whatever fashion you want, knowing that when you go back to change the theme, it's just all it's doing is modifying those 3 colors. So for example, if we want to like make the fill of this one, so you can see there the colors, primary color value 3. If we want to make the fill primary color 2, and that's the same thing. You can build objects using those 3 colors. So that I would say is the easiest way to do it, is to work on, if you're not worried about the insert screen so much and you just want something that's easy and quick to brand, to build for either internal or your clients, just use those 3 colors and build things around them, because then when someone flicks the theme over and goes back to that,
All
that
that is
then,
fixed. Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So that I would say is the don't reinvent the wheel way. If you want to go and do all of that, there's one of the ways is to look at the themes that I've built. Okay, so what I did, if I go down, here. So at the top, you've got the default theme, and that sets out all these values. Now you can add as many values as you want.
As you want.
In
Okay.
the first version I had of this, I had the boldness, italic, alignment, underlines, the X value, the Y value, the width, the height, everything that is a property can be set as a value.
Okay. Okay.
The colors, I eventually went with just the colors because you know what, it was too much. It was like 57 different things you could change in the app, but then you have to set them for the app
Yeah.
on start to work properly.
Yeah.
So I went back to just using these 3 colors because the number of times I mean, apart from like font size, the number of times I change like italics or underlines in an app is I can count them on 2 hands, So I wanted to focus on the thing that people really struggle with, which is the colors. So if we look down, we see this styles option. Now inside here, you got your default screen style, and it's got 2 properties. It's got a fill, and it's got the loading spinner. So the fill points to palette dot this thing, screen background color, and palette is this default theme. Now I know it doesn't say that anyway, but it is.
Yeah.
That's just what it is. And so that will look for screen background color and this value. So you can set that to whatever. So if you want your backgrounds to always be, your company's red or your company's whatever, you can just set it to an RGBA value if you want. It doesn't have to be a variable.
Okay.
But obviously the variables make it a lot easier to make it accessible. So the same thing applies to all of these other buttons. You've got controls, sorry. You've got a default label. Now here's where you can see all the other bits. You've got fonts, we've got font weight, we've got size. Unless you really need to, don't do this, because it's one of those things that you can just spend hours and hours and hours like fine tuning to a point, when really we just want to enable the slowest part of your app building, which for me is going in and clicking all the different fills and the border color and the hover border color and the hover text, all of that nonsense, and just doing that really quickly. The other bits, I mean, changing a font size, for me, that's usually like 1 or 2 clicks, like click, 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 24, done. Whereas the colors was a lot more difficult, especially if you work with your company colors, because that's not going to show up on that default picker. You're going to have to enter in the hex value or the RGBA value, so having it in here makes it a lot easier. So now what you would do, if you want to edit one of your existing ones or you want to create your own one, I'm going to give a quick demo now of this because because people always ask this, but
yep.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to make a new folder here and just call it test. And I'm going to extract, let's extract the one I saved from the portal. This is if you're doing it from scratch. This is a blank app, and we extract it into that folder there. Now you've got all this stuff. You can do all sorts of cool things here, like, is it this one, properties? You can change the name. You can give it something that's not actually in the app, but you can actually set as like a hidden property as the author. You can say like, I am Mancat, and somewhere in the app, in the hidden properties, is an author field that now has that value. And then you can do all sorts of cool things that I don't recommend, but I'm just going to say it anyway. You can change the width and the height, but obviously that then all your controls were based on the X coordinates of that original width and height. So if you change that, it's not going to change all the other controls. We're just changing like static values here. So while you can change this, I do not recommend it. Just stick to the colors and stick to the themes. There's a lot you can do here, but there's also a lot you can break. So for example, the originating version, you don't want to change that. these are the preview flags that you've enabled for that app. So in the experimental and preview settings, those are actually contained in each app to tell you which one it's enabled. So, okay, there's that. So let's not do that. And you'd go in now. You've got a bunch of different folders here. Your controls folder will only have 2 for a blank app. Why 2? One is the app itself, and the other one is the first screen.
Oh,
Because
okay.
every app has that first blank screen,
first screen,
regardless
yeah.
of how you make it. So if I go look at this number 1, you can see there the name is actually app. And for those of you who didn't know, Power Apps was originally called App Magic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And inside here, we've got things like properties. So for example, the confirm exit on your app properties. So if I pop in here and like in your app, you got confirm exit message, on start, and size breakpoints, right?
Yeah.
Those are actually editable properties in this here as well. So you can see confirm exit, and then invariant script is the actual script bit that it's running. So in this case, it's false, or breakpoints might be that. So that's your app. Then you have your first screen. So that would be screen one. And something to look at here. Let's do a search for it. Parent. So because it's the top level object, it's got no parent because it's just considered a parent of the app.
Okay. Yeah.
So a child of the app, sorry. And then if you put a control into this app, it will show its parent as screen 1.
Okay.
So it's kind of like this whole hierarchical view. So if I, let's not open the blank one. Let's open the running template one. And if I go to controls, you can see there are a bunch of different controls there because all the different things I've inserted. If I take a quick look at one of them, that's a screen. And that's a screen. Let's go further down the list. These are all screens. Okay. I don't want to faff around too much with this, but all your objects and screens and controls will be shown within here. And if okay, so we've extracted your company app or your blank app, whatever it may be, to this folder. We've got all these properties. Inside references, you've got all sorts of cool things. You've got a list of data sources. If you've used any in your app, it'll show up in there. You've got resources, templates that we used with it, and then themes. So you go into themes, and let's say we change the screen background color. You know, I want to make the default background color red. And I save that. So this is just a really quick example. It's not going to be the whole dynamics, but
okay. Yeah, that's fine.
I'll do that in a sec first. I just want to show like the concept. Yeah. So there's a few ways to do the reconstituting of them. I've had lots of issues with using different zip tools to get it done, because if you look at one of these, you see here where it says method. So it doesn't deflate the actual folders themselves. The objects within them, yes. Whereas if I just went and added that to test.zip and open that with serve and zip, you can see it's done a store method for each of these. Yeah. And trying to figure out all of that is going to get really complicated. There's a really easy way to do it. Thank you to @Gabbers on the Power Apps community forums, because he gave me the idea and the base script, and I've tweaked that a bit just to make it easy. So there's this Powershell script that is super simple. I'm going to paste that in here. And then I'm going to open that with code. So all it is compress archive, and it uses the path that we're currently in and star for all files. And then destination is this app name, which we've set from the line above, and then dash update, and then it just renames it from a zip to an app. That's literally all you
Okay.
It's
Okay.
super simple, and I can't believe I didn't know about it. I spent ages. The way I used to do it before is you don't touch the original zip. You extract out the themes.json, then you have to drag drop the themes.json in. Otherwise, it affects the store and deflate and other methods.
Object. Okay.
But it was a hassle. Whereas now I should just be able to run this with PowerShell. Let's call this test cool, and it makes me test cool.ms app. And if I go back in here and let's open that up, browse, test cool.
Cool.
If I go new blank screen, there we go.
Okay, there we go.
So to do that with the dynamics, all you do is set that to a variable. So I'm going to do that now quickly. Just keeping an eye on time, but yeah, no, we're good. So let's get rid of that MS app and let's go back to Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to change the screen background color to test and call that T. Save that and rebuild that. Now, when I import that, it's going to have an issue because that variable is not set anywhere.
Yeah.
So this is the thing I think that throws a lot of people when they first do it is when you browse and open that up now, it should, I mean, I'm expecting errors. So if I go new screen, blank, yeah.
That's an error right there, yeah.
Error because the fill is set to color one test and we haven't defined that. So if I go in my on start, set color one test, and run my on start.
Yep. Oh.
Any new screen I add there, and if I insert a, now this is how you do the accessibility side. Then is you do this one, have it go, let's say, then you'll see there it's lost the value because in between us doing that set, we've given that value an error value, so it just like stops using it. So you just rerun the on start, and then if I hit this button, it should change the background to black. There we go. So that's like the really quick and dirty version of how you would do that. So that script that I used is also in the, I've got a link to it at the bottom of the post in the Power Apps community forums. So you can get that freely. You can get the templates themselves. So I say templates because there's a phone version and a tablet version. Reason being, right? You could obviously make it responsive, but if you try convert this, for example, using screen size orientation to portrait and just apply that, if you insert new screens, it gets all janky because it doesn't understand that you've converted it to a portrait. It's still trying to insert a landscape-based new screen. So that's why I had two versions, just because until they've made it 100% responsive, I know there's some stuff coming with the ReseWave 2 that's going to improve responsiveness. Hopefully it's something like this, because right now, yeah, if you do this, unfortunately, it's trying to do it like a landscape instead of like a portrait. So if I went to create and made a new blank one, phone layout, and popped in success screen. You see,
oh yeah,
it's very subtle, but the sizing is more like mobile based, whereas that is definitely from a tablet. And if I do the same for the tutorial, it's got the top down for mobile, whereas this is still trying to do the tablet version.
Yeah, the tablet, yeah.
So that's the only reason why there's two versions. And as soon as they've got a responsive normal version for both types of new screen, I'll revise it into one app. So
Awesome.
if other people want to edit their apps, right,
Hmm?
they're going to do
Yes.
is kind of what I did there. You extract, you save it down locally, extract it, then you go in and edit the themes.json.
Teams adjacent. Yeah.
You can either replace it with the one I've built and then do little tweaks yourself. But then what's going to happen is all the controls you've built, they'll still be
Yeah.
using RGBA, whatever the Microsoft Blue is, or RGBA, your company colors, or it's going to be set to, each of them is a static object. Like they've created these physical .json files for each object. So there's no like relative theming currently in the default Power App experience. Even when they build it themselves or when it's coming out like this, it's making the static objects. So you're still going to have to go through and change these to like, you know, somewhere down here it's got fill. So then you change that to, you know, primary color 1. Now you'll have to do that either in here or you can do it from the app itself.
Okay.
So it's only with the defaults that are going to be affected by the new themes.json. Anything else that's already exists as a static object, and you have to change it either here by going primary color 1 or whatever it is, or by going into your app and going in and changing. Okay, no, this needs to be, you know, color test 1. So that background now needs to be color test 1.
Okay.
So similar sort of thing, but just using all the 3-tiered colors that I had in there.
Yeah. Oh, awesome.
So yeah, I mean it's crazy and it's well out there, but as far as how safe is it to use, quite safe, because the thing is the unofficial tool they released, the theme editor, does exactly the same thing. All I'm doing is instead of setting it to static colors like they did, I'm just adding in that extra variable step.
Yeah.
So the only difference between the two things is I've taken what a theme generator does and then given it variables. So as far as, unless they want every app that anyone's ever built using the theme generator to break, they can't break this concept, because this concept is the actual objects have properties. And I mean, in terms of object-oriented programming, you can't really get away from that. It's objects have to have properties. And if you change the name of them, unless it's back compatible, so if we look at like, if they change this to no longer be called fill and be called like background, you know, every object that's ever been built is built statically like this. So every app that's ever been built will still say fill, not background. So it would cause compatibility issues with like every app that's ever been built. So I'm so confident that this, and I've got like a soft yes from the team about whether we can do this.
Okay.
So they said, they didn't say no, but they accept that this is happening. It is currently doing that already with the theme editor. Yeah.
Awesome. I mean,
there's
there's a lot, you know, that Bernard's like running through my mind. Like I have ideas or a lot of things I want to do. So if we got you right, so let's say I already have my app and I want to integrate this, like you're saying, I first have to, you know, extract the app and then replace it with your team, and then I can go make modifications.
Yeah, so you do usual save as down locally to this computer, and then you extract it to a folder, replace the themes.json or edit parts of it, copy pasting values from the one I've got here. So you know you can pull apart the one I made as well and just take parts of it. So like if you want, okay, like let's say you like how I did the buttons, you can go find button, default button style. There we go. And you can just copy the very extensive, but it's, there we go. That and that, if you replace that in your themes.json in your existing app, all the buttons that are created from then on will use the 3-tiered coloring. So there's that. And then on the app on start, you'll need to obviously define those 3 variables.
3 variables.
3 colors and 3 text colors to match them.
Yeah.
The other 2, default label color and dark mode. So quick explanation of that default label color. The reason is because of the new screens. Unfortunately, the team, when they created all these new screens, instead of creating entirely new objects, they just based it on existing objects. So you got default label style, right, which is cool. But then you got basic no size label style. And then you got basic no size inverted background label style, and so on, and it goes on. So all they did was they used the control template called label and built a new like version of it, but it still uses that base label. So every time you creating a new screen like this, like one of these, that's a label, but with specific properties like X, Y values, font sizes, etc. That's another label, and so on and so on. So you need to have a default label value throughout because it's used everywhere. I mean, like in the meeting, in the calendar side as well, there's just like every single one of the little things there is like a different yeah. Let's go to yeah. So each of these is a label, and then each of those it's just labels everywhere. So so you keep those three colors, the default label, and then dark mode. The way I've used that in the themes is for the background. So you can see up here for the background, if dark mode, then color fade the primary color back 50%. If it's not, then color faded positive 50%. So either lighten or darken it. And then on the, let's find a good one, the checkboxes. So you can see there, the checkbox background is actually filled, and the fill for that checkbox, even though you can't like change it in here, I think you might actually be able to, but checkbox background fill, right? Yeah, you can't default it to a formula like this unless you use the themes. So that's another thing you could do. Like what I've done with these is it's a formula in the themes.json. So if I go checkbox background fill, default checkbox style, and you can see background fill. I've got palette.inner circle background color. That up here. Oh wait, this is from the blank one. I need to actually open one from the theme editor. So if I go in here, not that, the themes. There we go. And if I find checkbox, default checkbox, there we go. Checkbox background fill.
Background fill. Okay.
Thought that looked a bit funny. Okay, right. So instead of having it just point to this palette dot whatever, all I've got it doing is a formula of if dark mode, then color fade that, otherwise color fade that. So you could have like really complex formulas for default objects in your app. So I mean, the sky's the limit really. You can make whatever you want in there. But for me, I just wanted it simple that if we're in a dark theme, give it a dark background so that it stands out like that. And so that if it overlaps anything, you can still see partially. And then the other one was the radio toggle. Yeah, radio toggle. So same story with that. It's got the same formula, identical formula. And I think no, not the toggles. These ones.
Okay, the same for the racing.
Yeah, you mean you could change it to whatever you want. That's why I say like use what I built, pick it apart, and then make it your own. Like I put it out there for free use. I don't want any money. I don't care how people use it. I'm be happy to see you take it apart and do whatever you want with it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, don't you think it would be cool to kind of like you say, work on the themes editor they are working on, make it much more accessible, and it's probably a matter of going, changing it, and then just coming to just uploading it somewhere in the App Studio or something and having that. But I really would love to see this much easier.
Well, you see, this is the thing. They have the actual source code for the theme generator on GitHub there, where you download that
Oh,
same theme.
okay.
So like one of the things I am actually working on is I want to make it that you could use that theme editor to generate what I generated with the variables, but
Okay.
with colors. So
Colors, yeah.
I'll have like something over here for colors. I won't use this, and then over here these will all just be set to variables, and I won't have
Instead of
10. I'll have just the 3, and then people will easily be able to do it
just
and
select,
generate their own ones. But if you want to, and that's the other, oh, I forgot about it. That's the other thing. If you want to test what colors you're working on, I have a screen for that. So
Oh, okay.
it's got a bunch of different controls in, and if we want to like, let's say we change that to like green
How
and
that's gonna look like. Okay.
orange, and let's leave that one like light blue, and we hit set theme,
Oh,
it'll show
okay.
us what that's going to look like already.
Look
So you
like,
don't have
okay.
to like,
Yeah.
you don't have to set the RGBA values every time. If you just want to fiddle around and like, oh no, this looks terrible, I'm just gonna, maybe we make that like lighter green, and we make that one like a white color. We try that one. Yeah, that looks better. So you can actually test out kind of what the theme generator does, but I just wanted a sort of stopgap until I've actually, because I mean, like I say, I'm still teaching myself C#. So like looking at the source code for this, I was like, oh my goodness, like the whole realm that I've never seen before. But I'll get there. I'll get there.
Yeah.
And then I want to make it that you can build this in to your existing apps. So I want to, what I really want is people be able to save down their apps, open up my version of the theme editor. It takes their app, pulls out the themes.json, and then replaces it with my one, and then exports out an app again. But you know that's a lot more complicated than I make it sound, or at least for me.
I mean, yeah, but hey, I mean, this is going to be an inspiration for others to also, pick what you've done and work or build upon it. So I'm very positive that in the very near future, all this is going to be, much, much more simpler and a reality for all of us to enjoy. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So it's taken quite a while to build this. So this is why I keep telling people, like, don't reinvent the wheel. Like this took me a long time, because to do this, I mean, here's the big kicker is like, if you really want to do this from scratch, a modern day version of the themes.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah,
it's
I'm looking at the size on the right, and it's
5,700 lines. It's crazy. So if you have the spare time to do that, fair enough. It took me quite a number of evenings over several months to do every single one of them, because the problem is, for things like working out the default label, how do you know where it's used?
Yep.
And so if you set it to one of these other colors, what happens to one of the new screens? Does that suddenly then have a white text on a white background, and then it doesn't work anymore? Because that happened. Yeah. So there's a lot to do, and I did what a lot of people in the CSS world do. I did the equivalent of border 1px red.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I set each one of these to RGBA 25500 one at a time, to see where each of it is used for like all the new screens, and then worked out how to like layer it properly so that they all just look fine.
That's a lot of work.
So yeah. But I'm trying to save other people the time of doing this.
Exactly.
That's why I say, like, just use this, and if you don't like my primary colors, don't use them, fine. But then just change what I've already built here with primary color 2 to like, okay, no, actually our default form viewer needs to be primary color 1. And then save that out, rather than doing the whole thing from scratch.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah. I think that's pretty much it for the current brand template. There's the new version I'm currently working on. What I'm trying to do is the WCAG picker. So like in let's go back on that WCAG checker. So
Mm.
using this, we can then determine how big and what the WCAG rating is for different
For that.
colors.
Yeah.
So, if I do, you can see as I start changing it there, these are failing
Failing
because
or
they're too
passing,
light
yeah.
together, and someone who's got
Yeah.
low vision, they're going to struggle with that.
Yeah.
So the new version I'm working on uses at Short for Tim, another Power App developer. He created and it's on the community forums as well.
Community forums. Okay.
He created a WCAG checker for colors, but it's just that. Now I want to integrate that into my branding template so that when someone starts testing out these colors here, I'll have a little row at the bottom here telling you what the WCAG ratings are
For
of
that,
the theme you're making.
Okay.
So before you even made the theme, just from the testing, you'll be able to see, oh, no, actually, this doesn't actually meet the standards that need to be for WCAG. Because this is a big thing. Like, you really don't want to exclude people. I mean, well, I don't, but you shouldn't really want to exclude people from your apps in any way or form. Because Power Apps already has so many accessibility things, for screen readers, for hint text, for tab indexes, all these little things. If you actually take apart an app or view it in if you're playing it and you go view source, view page source, and just go find ARIA. So if you're in the play mode, so it's not digging that too much, but if you're in play mode and you're just running an app, all the ARIA labels and principles are applied to every object in a Power App. They do that for you. You don't have to do any of that. So most people, I don't think, know that, but that's crazy amount of good that they're doing just by having everything ARIA compatible. As long as you set that tooltip, tab index, then and some of these have accessibility options as well additionally, but as long as you set those, the editor and the play function will do all the rest for you. It'll make it accessible so that when screen readers are being used on it, it'll just work. As long as you've done the layering with the tab index and the tooltip, it'll just do it. So yeah, this is one of the other things I use is the WCAG checker, because obviously there's the color blindness checker, this checker, and the two of them together help you make apps that are just accessible for everyone. So I want to have this in my next version and default to that. And then the next version also, because by the time it's ready, components will be GA. So it'll have components, because right now, these aren't components. I'm aware other people have mentioned this before. Don't worry, I'm fully aware. But the reason being is that components right now, I mean, just a few weeks ago, we had an issue where global variables weren't being picked up by components. I mean, everyone knows about it. They sorted it so quickly, but it's because we're not at GA yet. We're getting there. And once that's done, then I can start putting all of these things like the menus and into components, and then it can be an easy chop change between different apps for it. So
awesome. I mean, this is a lot, a lot of productive stuff that you're sharing here, and we really appreciate that. So it's crazy, to think of the times and hours you're putting to get this to the point where it is. Sancho, very appreciative of the time. Thank you very much for sharing this. I mean, it's not over. I know definitely I'm going to be calling on you for probably another episode. But as we do on the show, it's kind of like a tradition where when we are done with one guest, we want to showcase the next guest coming on the show. So I'm going to pull this up, and I don't know how I'm going to. Okay, I think I'm going to do it in such a way that you might probably see it as well. But let's see. And do I have my applause ready for the next person we have? Yep. So Let's give a round of applause to our next guest coming on the show, and he's in the person of Alex Powers. Alex Powers is coming on the show next Sunday. So let me actually do it this week. So Sancho, you can have a look. You can have a look at that. So what I'm going to do is that for you, Sancho, I'm sharing my other screen that should give you that should give you access.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, so you should see, you should Sancho. So, thank you very much for your time, Sancho. We really much, appreciate it. Spending, an hour of your time sharing all this insight for us. Thank you very much. We'll call on you again pretty soon. But
I've
until
got
then, for hmm?
I've got two quick little takeaways, if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
yeah. I was actually going to ask you, that what are, like your tips or tricks or advice or whatever, your take or things you want to say before we close it out.
It's more like an overall thing. The one is,
Yeah,
believe in your own ability and don't let anyone tell you that you can't do something. Because obviously, I've had a lot of that, and if someone like me, an autistic person who struggles a lot, can do it, then I promise you, you can. There's literally no limit, and we all believe that we are imposters. I mean, even now, after
yeah,
everyone's seen
yeah.
this cool stuff I've done. Even
Imposter,
right
yeah,
now,
yeah,
I still think that I don't have
yeah,
nearly as much
yeah.
knowledge as some of the other power app makers. So the only person you should ever compare against is yourself.
Myself.
You look at your old self from like 6 months ago, and have you developed? That's all you need to be comparing against.
Yeah. These are, very powerful words from Sancho. I mean, like you're saying, believe in yourself. I mean, you are the only person who can do it. It's not far from you. It's all you need to do is just take that very first step. Just take the first step in trying to do it, and you can make it. Well, folks, this has been another thrilling episode of the Power Series. Until we come your way again next week, I'm yours truly, Samuel Adrani, and then stay positive, stay safe in this era, and then use the times, build some power ups and be productive. Until then, adios.